a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Detroit, film. Detroit is a 2017 American period crime drama film directed by Kathryn Bigelow and written by Mark Boal. Based on the Algiers Motel incident during Detroit's 1967 12th Street Riot, the film's release commemorated the 50th anniversary of the event. The film stars John Boyega, Poulter, Algee Smith, Jason Mitchell, John Krasinski, and Anthony Mackie. Detroit premiered at the Fox Theater, Detroit, on July 25, 2017, and began a limited theatrical release on July 28, 2017, before opening wide on August 4, 2017. The film received positive reviews from critics, with particular praise towards Bigelow's direction, Boal's script and the performances of Boyega, Poulter, and Smith, but was a box office failure, only grossing $21 million against its $34 million budget. Plot. On July 23, 1967, the Detroit police stage a raid on an unlicensed club during a celebration for returning black veterans. While suspects are being arrested, a mob forms and starts throwing rocks at the officers before looting nearby stores and starting fires, beginning the 12th Street Riot. With civil authorities, elected representatives, and even emergency services unable to maintain any semblance of order, Governor George W. Romney authorizes the Michigan National Guard and Army paratroopers to enter Detroit in order to provide assistance. On the second day of rioting, two cops pursue a fleeing looter. One of them, Philip Krause, kills the man with a shotgun against orders, but is allowed to remain on active duty until his superiors can decide whether to file murder charges. The Dramatics, a professional black R&B group, arrive in Detroit hoping to score a recording contract. Seconds before their scheduled performance at a music hall, the police shut down the venue and order them to leave the city. En route, their bus is attacked by rioters, and the group subsequently splits up, with lead singer Larry Reid and his friend Fred Temple renting a room at the local Algiers Motel for the night. They meet two white girls, Julianne and Karen, who introduce them to their friends Carl Cooper and Aubrey Pollard. Carl and another friend stage a prank using a starter pistol, upsetting Julie and Karen, who move to the room of Green, a Vietnam War veteran, while Larry and Fred return to their own room. Melvin Dismukes, a private security guard, is assigned to protect a grocery store from looters, and ingratiates himself with the guardsman. Carl decides to fire several blanks from his pistol in the direction of the troops to frighten them, but they mistake it for a sniper attack and open fire on the Algiers. A detachment of police arrive, led by Krause, who guns down Carl when he tries to escape and plants a knife next to his body as he bleeds out and dies. Accompanied by Dismukes and some guardsmen, the police round up everyone in the hotel and line them against the wall, demanding to know who the shooter was. Despite Dismukes failing to find any weapon during a search of the room, Krause terrorizes and orders several suspects to be moved to different rooms and subjected to mock executions as part of a game to terrify the others into confessing. Unwilling to get involved, most of the guardsmen and soldiers leave without informing anyone of Krause's abuse. Julie and Karen are taken to an upstairs room when they begin screaming, and Julie's clothes are torn off. Disgusted, Dismukes and a guardsman manage to get them released from custody. Aubrey is killed during his interrogation by one of the remaining police officers, and Krause, fearing arrest, permits the remaining suspects to leave, but only if they swear to keep silent. Green and Larry agree, but Fred is killed when he refuses. As the riots die down, Dismukes, while working his other job in a factory, is arrested and charged with murder after Julie identifies him as being present at the Algiers that night. Krause and his fellow officers are questioned as well, and when everyone except Krause confesses, they are also charged. Larry, whose singing career has stalled due to the trauma he experienced, is summoned as a witness to testify. The judge ultimately refuses to accept any of the confessions as evidence, and without a solid case, the all-white jury acquits Dismukes, Krause, and their co-defendants of all charges. Dismukes confronts Krause with the truth, but finds himself powerless to get any justice for the victims. The film ends by explaining what became of the participants. Dismukes moved to the suburbs to escape death threats and resumed work as a security guard. Krause and his men remained on the force, but never returned to active duty. Julie rebuilt her life and started a family, and Larry became a choir singer and still lives in Detroit to the present day. Production. On January 28, 2016, it was announced that Kathryn Bigelow and Mark Boal would re-team to make a film about the 1967 Detroit riots, with Bigelow directing from a script by Boal. Both would also produce the film, along with Annapurna Pictures' Megan Ellison and Matthew Budman. Game of Thrones actress Hannah Murray was cast in a key role in the film, although her character was then being kept under wraps. The film was scheduled to shoot in the summer of 2016, in order to be released in 2017 for the 50th anniversary of the riots. On June 21, 2016, John Boyega joined the cast. On August 3, 2016, Jack Rayner, Will Poulter, and Ben O'Toole were cast in lead roles. On August 4, 2016, Anthony Mackie joined the cast, and on August 5, 2016, Jacob Lattimore and Algee Smith also joined. On August 8, 2016, Joseph David Jones joined the cast, followed by Caitlin Dever on August 30, 2016. On September 9, 2016, Jason Mitchell joined the cast, and on September 13, 2016, John Krasinski was also added. In October 2016, Jeremy Strong, Chris Chalk, Austin Hebor, Ephraim Sykes, Laz Alonso, Nathan Davis Jr., Malcolm David Kelly, Peyton Alex Smith, and Leon Thomas III all joined the cast of the film. Filming. It was reported at the end of July 2016 that the film had commenced principal photography in Boston during the previous week. Scenes were filmed inside Dedham District Court, in Dorchester, Massachusetts and in Brockton, Massachusetts. In addition, the movie filmed in Detroit during October 2016. The elimination of Michigan's film incentives in 2015 affected the filming locations. Post-production. In May 2017, James Newton Howard was hired as the film's composer. In July 2017, Detroit rapper T Grizzly released a song called "Detroit" for the soundtrack. The Roots and Bilal released a song named "It Ain't Fair" for the soundtrack. Release. Detroit began a limited release in 10 markets on July 28, 2017, opening in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Detroit, San Francisco, Houston, Atlanta, and Baltimore. Annapurna Pictures then released the film nationally, its first as a distributor, on August 4, 2017. Annapurna handled the film's North American distribution, while Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Entertainment One handled distribution for its international release. On November 3, 2017, it was announced the film would get a 10-city, 20-screen re-release on December 1, 2017 in an effort to push its award campaign. Box office. Detroit grossed $16.8 million in the United States and Canada and $4.8 million in other territories for the worldwide total of $21.5 million, against a production budget of $34 million. In North America, Detroit grossed $350,190 in its limited opening from 20 theaters, finishing 16th at the box office. The film then had its wide expansion alongside Kidnap and The Dark Tower, and was initially projected to gross $15 million from 3,007 theaters over the weekend. The film made $525,000 from Thursday previews, which was more than the $515,482 it made in its entire week of limited release. It then made $2.6 million on its first day, lowering weekend projections to $7.5 million. It went on to open to $7.1 million, finishing 8th at the box office. 40% of its opening weekend audience were African American. Deadline.com said that the film could have done better had it been released in the fall during festivals and awards season. In its second weekend, the film grossed $2.9 million, dropping 59.5% and finishing in 13th. In its third week of wide release, the film was pulled from 1,579 theaters and grossed $850,000. Critical response. Detroit received praise for its direction, script and performances, especially those of Poulter, Boyega, and Smith. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 84% based on 227 reviews, and an average rating of 7.5. The site's critical consensus reads, Detroit delivers a gut-wrenching and essential dramatization of a tragic chapter from America's past that draws distressing parallels to the present. On Metacritic, which assigns a normalized rating to reviews, the film has a weighted average score of 78 out of 100, based on 48 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A- on an A+ to F scale, while ComScore reported filmgoers gave an 86% overall positive score and a 63% definite recommend. Richard Roeper of Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 4 out of 4 stars and called it one of 2017's best, saying, Journalist-screenwriter Mark Boal does a magnificent job of juggling the multiple storylines and creating fully authentic characters, some flawed, some basically decent, some evil. Writing for Rolling Stone, Peter Travers praised the cast and script, giving the film 3.5 stars and saying, Detroit is far more than a liberal howl against the escalating toxicity of racism in America. Bigelow, with the same immersive intensity that Christopher Nolan brings to Dunkirk, smacks us down in the middle of a brutal historical event so we can see it and feel it for ourselves. Conversely, Alexander Nazarian of Newsweek said, Bigelow's characters never come alive, moving through the film less as people than entries in a sociology textbook. If Bigelow could get inside the minds of soldiers suffocated by post-traumatic stress disorder, as she did so capably in The Hurt Locker, she can get into the mind of anyone. In Zero Dark 30, she made even CIA interrogators likable. The characters in Detroit, though black and white, are as flat as the plains of the upper Midwest. Several critics noted the film's questionable take on a predominantly African-American-based story. A. O. Scott in the New York Times wrote, It is curious that a movie set against a backdrop of black resistance and rebellion, however inchoate and self-destructive its expression may have been, should become a tale of black helplessness and passivity. The white men, the decent ones as much as the brutes, have the answers, the power, the agency. K. Austin Collins of The Ringer wrote, This movie isn't really about black people as people, nor history as a lived experience, but is instead invested in a dutiful, just the facts, mom reenactment that pretends those other things are already a given. Boal, and Bigelow beside him, refuse to speculate about or imagine the rest. The New Yorker's Richard Brody called the film a moral failure, saying, Bigelow's intentions come through clearly, to depict an incident, and a climate, of racism, to show that the cruelty of these deeds was multiplied by their ultimate impunity, and to suggest that, in the intervening half-century since the events depicted in the film took place, little has changed. Movies aren't made with intentions, though. They're made with people and with equipment. And what Bigelow has her actors do, for the benefit of the camera, is repellent to imagine. Tim Grierson and Will Leach from The New Republic mentioned the film as a possible Academy Award candidate in the main category Best Picture, and mentioned John Boyega as a possible nominee for Best Actor. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?